How's it going, creeps? Welcome to episode 16 of Cinema Creep, a Black Mass Films podcast where we dissect all things vile, disgusting, and downright terrifying in the world of horror cinema. I am Michael Myers.
And I'm Laurie Strode.
And this is our Halloween special part 2. And if you haven't figured it out, we are obviously doing Halloween 1 and Halloween 2. So I apologize ahead of time if my audio sounds a little muffled. I am in full costume. We go all the way here at this podcast. So I'm in full get up. Andrew, I commend you very greatly for your costume.
Well, actually, I wasn't aware we were wearing costumes. I just decided to dress like this today, and it just happened to fit. So
it happened to work out for you. So a quick shout out before we dive into these films to our sponsor, Everblack Coffee. So, up until today, I think you can still use it today. The promo code Dead and Gone 20 for 40% off your order. That's Dead & Gone 20. Once Halloween is over, we will figure something else out. But one quick thing with Everblack Coffee. So we want to do a little giveaway here on the podcast, to give back to our fans. So given that I am Michael Myers for the night, the first person to comment on this video and tell me what the relevance of this Michael Myers mask and this Dr. Pepper can are, you will win a free bag of Everblack Coffee, the roast of your choice. So, be sure to get those answers in, guys. And with that being said, how you doing, Andrew? How you feeling?
I'm doing pretty great. I'll be feeling even better after I start eating my Activia yogurt I got over here on the desk. So, shout out Activia. It supports my gut health.
Yeah. Not affiliated, not sponsored at all, but hey, hit us up. We're always looking for sponsors on this podcast. So,
what's up, Activia?
Yeah, what's up, Activia?
So, being our first year, Justin, doing the podcast, right, and it being our first Halloween special, even though we've talked briefly about Halloween a couple episodes back, that was more about, like the remakes and such, but it's only fitting for our first Halloween as a podcast to talk about these two films, right?
Yes, and, I'm extremely excited for it because Halloween is my all-time favorite horror film ever. It is also my favorite film of all time. So, Halloween 2 is right up there. So, definitely looking forward to diving into these. And it's going to be a good episode. But I want to point out that I feel your pain from last episode because, you were Jack Goodman from An American Werewolf in London and you had the full mask going on. Tonight, that's my pain. I'm carrying that burden.
It was suffocating.
Suffocating. Only I don't have to paint my face under this like you did, so I might end up pulling this up and getting some coffee a couple times, Got to do what you got to do,
man.
Yeah, so that being said, no news tonight. This is Halloween special. This is Halloween. It's October 31st right now.
First and foremost, happy Halloween to all the listeners out there. I hope even though in, the weird times that the world's in right now in 2020, you guys still celebrated in some shape or fashion. I know over here at Cinema Creep, our families got together and, I usually go all out in my yard, decorating and whatnot. And we just passed out candy, socially distancing, of course, and made sure that the kids in the neighborhood that did want to trick or treat, got candy. So it was an excellent time.
Yeah. So, if you guys did trick or treat or you're still out trick or treating, make sure you're doing it safe and all that fun stuff. But we got to keep the tradition alive, That's the best part of the year. Everyone's like, Christmas, the most wonderful time of the year, but this is it right here. So
yeah, don't get me started. Hold on. Don't get me started on trunk or treat. Don't, that is the worst thing to ever happen to Halloween is trunk or treat. Don't take your kids trunk or treating.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's the worst thing or the fact that you can't walk into like Lowe's Hardware midway through October and not see a bunch of Christmas trees. So,
I mean, half of the fun of Halloween was saying, wow, I've got all of this candy from all of these different strangers. Time to play Russian roulette. Which one is poison? Which one has a razor blade? Sometimes none of them, if you're lucky. But Trunk or Treat, it's a different story. It's not as fun.
Damn that monitored candy, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, with that, we are going to go in to this first film because this is a watch every year for me. I mean, I watch this multiple times throughout the year, but definitely through October, this is a must watch. And of course, that is 1978's Halloween, written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, directed by John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, PJ Soles, Nick Castle, and Donald Pleasance, among others. So, if you have not seen this film, really, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Quick synopsis for those of you who haven't, by whatever, chance. 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night in 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to kill again. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this film came to be?
Yeah. So the inception of this movie, guys, what initially spurred John Carpenter to write this movie, he had an experience in college when he was touring a psychiatric hospital. Carpenter met a child who stared at him with, quote, a look of evil, and it terrified him. So pretty interesting, right? That, as a filmmaker, as a writer, that's sort of one of those things that we've talked about before in our episode about, our film. And it's always about people watching, because you never know where those big ideas are going to spur from. You never know, like, later on down the road, that one weird dude in high school is all of a sudden going to be the protagonist or the antagonist, like Joseph in Creep. You're going to write a character based on the people you meet. And happens to John Carpenter as well.
Yeah. Well, that's just part of being a filmmaker and people watching and that sort of thing. But sorry, I had to get out of the mask for a second. But this is actually a good thing for those of you who want to do the contest, answer the question and get the Everblack, because this is a hint. This is a further hint to the relevance of the Dr. Pepper can and the mask. So, but yeah, this film, there's a lot about the production of this film that, is interesting. And John Carpenter, if you watch any of his interviews anyway, he's very, I don't know, he's a cynical dude. And it's like every movie he makes, he's like, yeah, that was the thing. Now I'm moving on to the next. But even though, like, that's how he feels about Halloween and this franchise in its whole, there you go with the Activia. Originally, this wasn't even John Carpenter's idea, right? So the concept, came from Irwin Yablans, who teamed up with, wasn't it Mustafa Akkad? And they were like, we're going to make this film. And he had this idea, it's called the Babysitter Murders. I did that the last time we talked about Halloween. I kept saying Baby City Murders for some reason.
Baby City.
That'd be a
shitty
murders.
City to live in.
Baby City. But, it was originally, the original title was The Babysitter Murders, where it was literally just, this guy stalking babysitters. Because back in the day, that was like a thing, babysitting was more prominent than it is now, especially. It was kind of just different anyway. That's even how, like, When a Stranger Calls, that's why that was so scary for the time, right? But so then he was like, well, what if we set it on October 31st? And they were just searching and searching to see if there were any other films called Halloween, and there weren't. So
surprisingly, right?
Yeah.
Because even in 1978, you still had all of those movies, all those horror movies that came before, right? In the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you figured there would have been a Halloween, but there wasn't, surprisingly, all the way up to 78. This Activity is fucking good.
What flavor you got?
I've got strawberry and blueberry.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Different ones, but yeah, I'm up on that strawberry right now.
Hey, that sounds pretty damn good. You should mix the two. But
mixing it with some Everblack coffee.
Yeah, we are hardcore kissing some Activia ass right now, trying to get that sponsorship. But so yeah, like I said, Irwin Yablans had the story, and then they hired John Carpenter to write and direct it. But he was like, under one condition, I want full creative freedom with this. So they're like, fine, you got it, And him and his girlfriend at the time, Deborah Hill. You know, she was she got a producing credit on this. She wrote some of the dialogue, helped him with the script, and you know, the rest is, as they say, history. But let's talk about the actual production, because this production did not cost a whole lot at all for the time. And you know, a lot of the people worked on it for free, right? They were friends of Carpenter's and Deborah Hill, so they worked for either free or extremely cheap. But that the movie definitely doesn't seem cheap at all.
No, I mean, it's still considered, Justin, one of the greatest indie film successes of all time, you know? And that's not only because they had a budget of $300,000 and it went on to gross like 75 million or something like that, right? Like, it was huge. And you know, initially there was people involved with it, like Jamie Lee Curtis, that thought it was just, again, going to be like a B movie, like a second rate kind of movie. Yep. And as well as Donald Pleasance, right? And you know,
now, I will say about that though, Donald Pleasance was a trooper, and he did every interview I've read or anything, even though he was just like, yeah, you know, it's a B movie or whatever, he still like gave it his all. Like he was still serious while he was on set.
He Nicolas Caged it.
Yeah, even though he was only on set for like a week, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. I shot him 6 times.
6 times, yep. We'll get to that one. That's a good old Halloween 2 right there.
What I want to talk about real quick too, Justin, is like, do you remember the first time you ever watched this movie? Like,
I do.
Where were you, and what age were you, and how did it affect you?
Okay, so age, I don't remember the exact age. I'd probably say I was probably like 10. And, you know, I've briefly mentioned this in other episodes. So like, after my mom and dad split up, you know, like we would go and would stay at my mom's like every other weekend. And she would take us to the video store. Like that was just the thing we did every weekend, and go and do like the, you know, the 99-cent rentals or whatever. And I started like seeing the horror section, and everything just drew me in. So I would rent like, you know, Halloween was obviously one of them. And then I would always rent like Wishmaster and The Mangler and A Nightmare on Elm Street and all the Friday the 13th films. But something about Halloween stuck out to me. Like all of those films were great. And of course that shaped like, you know, me being into horror the way I am now. But Halloween, the original, was just so... It was so simple, right? And that's, you know, I've got that in the show notes, like talking about why I feel like this one still holds up better than any of the other entries in the franchise. It just had a simplicity, and it used suspense to, you know, scare the audience. It wasn't just, there wasn't even a whole lot of gore in this at all. And there's only a handful of kills, but there's more to the story that I want to like get on in a little bit later. But it just blew me away.
So around 10, you watched it alone?
I don't remember if I watched it alone, or, I mean, I'm imagining I probably like watched it with, you know, my mom and my brothers or something, but
I think the way I saw this is I didn't see it till a little bit later on. Like, I knew who Michael Myers was, right? I probably didn't see it till I was 12 or 13, and I happened to see it. I had a TV in my room around 12 or 13. I know right now all kids do, but back then they really didn't, because this is like the early 90s. And I had like HBO and Showtime and stuff like that, because we had satellite at the house, and somehow, like, you know, I guess I just got it, right? Which is a whole other different type of fucked up, but we'll talk about that in future episodes about movies I saw. But I pretty sure I either saw Halloween 1 or Halloween 2 when I was scrolling through the late night Showtime, and might have been HBO. It was one of the two. It was one of those movie channels, and I remember seeing it and then just immediately like watching it and getting freaked the fuck out and like turning it off, right? And then I didn't finish watching it probably till the following year, because before that I'd already seen, like at a young age, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street. I used to go to my friend's house, and they either had the VHSs or they were on TV or something, but they were always playing those movies, and I watched them. I watched all the Child's Plays, well, the first one when I was really little, you know what I mean? Yeah. And
that was one of the tapes we rented too.
Right. And some other horror films, you know, like Pet Sematary and stuff like that. But for some reason, because I've always heard about Halloween when I was, before I had seen it, and I always thought it was scarier than it actually was. So I built it up in my mind like, this is like the movie that I can't watch. This is the one that's going to ruin me if I watch it. So when I saw it that night, I was like in for like 10 minutes and then I was out. I was like, okay, because I was in my room at night by myself and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this right now. I am not doing this.
It's like Michael Myers comes out of your closet, Yeah. But I mean well, this to me, like, I'm gonna throw this out there, and then I want to talk a couple things about the actual production, and then I want to revisit this once we get into more of like the story aspects. But this film, to me, it did scare the shit out of me as a kid, but not for the same reason, like A Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or any of those other movies did. Those films are a lot more straightforward in like the killing and the gore and the over the top aspect, right? Well, not so much like the first Friday the 13th, but definitely that one had more of the gore aspect. But Halloween had just so much at the core of the story, the suspense and the setting. And like I said, I want to talk more about that in a minute. But this film to me, it just this was the one. And it stuck with me ever since. I like all the entries in the franchise just by default, but there's definitely, a ranking system there. But the first two are like, if I had to erase every Halloween film from existence, like I would be fine if only the first existed, but I would also be fine if only the first two existed. So, with that being said, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I definitely agree with you, like, about I would be fine if only the first two existed. And I was going to say that movie for me, like what you were just talking about, since I was so enthralled with like A Nightmare on Elm Street, was Dream Warriors. That was the one that was mine.
That's my favorite of that series by far.
Yeah. So, I was hooked on, Freddy Krueger as a kid. Even though I will mention that Michael Myers is debatable a better villain than Freddy. This is a debate that we'll have in the future on another episode. But going back to being fine if they just, X'd all of the other sequels and just had, 78 and 81. I mean, you would be all right with that? Like you could, if you were to show people Halloween in its essence, what movies would you show them?
I would show them the first one. Like absolutely bar none. Well, the first one.
They have to know the first one because the first one isn't like Friday the 13th where you can just skip it. Like Friday the 13th part 1, you could just skip.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to know about Pamela Voorhees, but all you need to know about her is that she's dead and she kind of controls Jason, or Jason has that soft spot for her. Like you don't need to know like that she went on a murdering rampage because it doesn't even matter throughout the franchise, right? So
right,
you would like with Halloween you have to have the first one, but other than the first one, which ones would you show if you could show two more? Okay, two more, because you could say number 2, obviously.
I will say number 2, and then my guilty pleasure is part 6. So
okay,
like 4 and 5 are, okay, just because like, Danielle Harris and that whole like story, but that's a topic for like, if we were to break down the whole franchise, like that's my one qualm with part 2 is it introduces that whole family relation thing. And that's what kind of muddles the story and the franchise, in my opinion. And that's where a lot of the goofiness came from later down the line. And even though part 6 branches off from that, like it's a sequel to part 4 and 5, I think that Michael Myers, other than part 2 Michael Myers, is the absolute scariest in the entire original franchise. Like the part 6 Michael Myers is fucking brutal.
But that's also the whole cult aspect, and you're fine with that?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
So when it comes to John Carpenter himself, one of the things he says he hates most, which you don't have to agree with John Carpenter.
Oh, if you're going, I'm pretty sure I know where you're going, and I do agree with him. And then I'll back up a little bit why. After you make this, I'll back up why I choose the 6th.
Well, I was going to say that he hates, any backstory given to Michael Myers. So
I agree.
I mean, obviously,
that's why
any
the
backstory.
first is my main.
Right. And then number 2, and then 6. Yeah. I'm not saying 6 is a bad film. Six is okay.
I'm just saying, okay, to me, 6, the reason I would show people 6 is just because that one, so 4 and 5 are not over the top enough to make up for the muddled story and the weird family back tie or the backstory and the cult, because in part 5 is where that's actually introduced. So 6 is over the top enough for you to be like, okay, well, this is fucking bonkers, but this is a wild movie. 4 is good. Like, I like 4, but I hate that fucking mask. The mask in part 5 is, it's okay. But I think everything about 6 is so over the top and just strange enough to make that one be like, okay, so this movie, story-wise, is fucking nuts. It's such a far cry from the original, but it's so over the top that it's just like, you'd expect it, Plus, there's Paul fucking Rudd, dude.
Yeah, I like the shit out of Paul Rudd.
So,
part 4, I agree with you. The mask is terrible. And I don't know, man. Like, I think there's a whole lot of saving grace in that film. Like, I think I like 4 better than I like 5.
Oh, I definitely like 4 better than 5.
And then when it comes to 6, like 6 is all right. Like, I don't mind 6 at all.
I just like how brutal Michael is in part 6. And like, we need to kind of stray back to the original, but I mean, in part 6, that's where you've got like, he kills the stepdad in the basement, right? By electrocution. And it's like a brutal scene. Like, he's foaming at the mouth. And then you've got the scene where they're running from Michael down that little like hallway in the basement. And the maintenance guy or the security or whatever gets trapped, and they close the door on him. They're like, sorry, we got to escape. And Michael catches up to him and like grabs him by the head and like smashes his head through the bars.
Yeah.
Like, that to me, it's so over the top that it makes the rest of the film like understandably goofy instead of it just being goofy.
I think for me, it's 1, 2, and then I think 4 and 6 are even. And then I would have to spend time actually picking apart the rest. But I don't know.
Resurrection is ranked at the bottom. H2O is right there with it.
Yeah, for sure.
But, moving back to the original, so, like we talked about, Carpenter, he was hired to write it. He basically based it on, the experience he had. Plus, he said he wanted to make a haunted house origin story. Like, every town has that one house that, something happened there, and it's like the urban legend. So he wanted to like do, that was the backstory he wanted to give. It's like the Myers house. So, just a couple little things that we can like gloss over and then dive into the story a little. We've talked about before on here, the budget was $300,000 to $325,000. Well, it was actually originally slated for $300,000, but good old Donald Pleasance basically wanted double what he was initially offered, and he was ultimately paid an estimated $20,000 for 1 week of work. Or I read somewhere it was either $20,000 or that's what he originally was offered, and he wanted double, so he got $40K. We'll have to go look at that at a different time, but it was Jamie Lee Curtis's first feature. She was reportedly only paid $8,000, but she gave it her all and killed it anyway. So interesting little thing about the story. I'll let you talk about this if you want, because I know, we both love Black Christmas, but I know that you're pretty big on Black Christmas.
Oh yeah, Black Christmas, guys, is probably one of my favorite horror films. So Bob Clark, I said that Carpenter asked Bob Clark if he made a sequel to Black Christmas, how he would do it, right? And Clark said he would catch the killer in his sequel and then escape a mental institution to return on Halloween night and stalk teenage girls, and then he would title it Halloween. So despite the similarities, Clark says Carpenter did not rip off his idea and made his own film. So the interesting part about this is John Carpenter seeked out advice from Bob Clark, and it's really rad to think that these two guys were talking at that time, and then they both created these 2 amazing slashers, 2 of the best ones ever made. But there'll be more about Black Christmas in a future episode coming up.
Yes.
For sure. But yeah, so I just think that's really cool because it's like when you find out, Justin, when you find out like bandmates were in the same band a long time ago, it's sort of the same thing with a lot of these masters of horror, right? Like they were either on each other's sets or they were friends or, you know, they were even having like friendly competition, right? So I love stories like that.
Oh, me too. So, you know, also go check out Black Christmas if you haven't. But so, you know, with that, Carpenter basically talked to him and was like, hey, you know, and then that kind of, I won't say he ripped it off, even though it sounds like he probably did. Like, given Bob Clark as a completely different filmmaker, the films would not have ended up the same way at all. So, you know, like I mentioned earlier, the simplicity of the original to me is what makes it stand out. Like, because, you know, we just talked about the sequels, the storyline starts to go off in these really weird places. And the original, you know, there was no family ties between Michael and Laurie Strode. You know, so it was a mystery. It's like, why is this dude following these teenage girls, right? And it's like the seemingly invincible, unstoppable like being. It's like he's everywhere. And in the fact that it's like the small town where, you know, it's supposed to be peaceful. And it's not. As Loomis said, death has come to your small town.
That's the thing, Justin. By the way, the blueberry activity is just as good. So if you guys are in the market for probiotic yogurt, blueberry strawberry Activia. That's the thing about Halloween, why it works, right? Because it's not over the top. It's not like modern day, you know, horror films. It doesn't have some kind of crazy thing. It happens in everyday America, right? Like it's like that could happen in my neighborhood. It looks like my neighborhood, right? And it's real life people. And that's one thing that I really respect about older horror films is just the way, you know, of course, how the world has gone now with like superficial physical attraction and stuff like that. But Jamie Lee Curtis and, you know, Loomis and everybody in this film, they look like actual people, right? They look like your neighbor or the girl next door or the, you know, the guy you go to work with. You know what I mean? That's why it's so sellable, you know? The town, you know, it's not like some big mansion like we talked about when a Stranger Calls remake is in this huge, you know, humongous mansion, you know, that has a freaking greenhouse in the middle of it and stuff like that is cool. But it's so much more relatable and so much more scary when you can actually, one, relate to it, and two, you could actually look around and it's a horror film that could be set in your universe, right?
Yep. But, you know, like I said, you know, when I was a kid, this movie scared me because it wasn't over the top like all of those other, you know, the other films at the time. And, you know, exactly what you said, like, I feel like this was in my neighborhood. There's even like, you know, I've shown you right up the, like around the block from my house, there's that little like wall and it kind of like that stone wall along the road. And it looks like where they would like the girls would be walking from high school. And part of what scared me as a kid, you know, Freddy, he's like this dream demon kind of thing. And it's like, even as a kid, you know, well, you know, that's outlandish. Like that's not real. And then Jason and all that. But, you know, so take the scene in Halloween when Tommy Doyle is looking out the window across the street. Like I used to be, when I was a kid, like I would freak myself out looking out the window at nighttime because like your mind plays tricks on you and you think you see things. But, you know, he looks out the window and he sees Michael standing across the street. And then he sees her at a different point carrying Annie's body back in the house. So it's like, this is this peaceful, quiet little neighborhood, you know, in 1970s, you know, like the American dream. Like this is the kind of neighborhood, you know, you would have left your doors unlocked, right? Or, you know, left your window open all day to let an apple pie cool off on the windowsill. You know, nothing bad can happen. Carefree, no worry in the world. And then here comes Michael Myers. But the thing about that too is, 15 years before this, that's where the haunted house aspect comes in, because people know of the Myers house, and it's like they try to forget. They still celebrate Halloween, and it's like they've had 15 years of, okay, well, this guy's locked up. We're a peaceful little quiet, just small town USA, and now you've got this guy that's like no MO. He's stalking these girls. He just like, fades in and out of the darkness and then reappears again and kills somebody. And
well, I think the thing about it, Justin, is I think too, like as a kid, it plays on your fears as well. I mean, you talk about Freddy and stuff like that, of course, nightmares and stuff like that. But even Michael Myers plays on your fears because he's the boogeyman, right? So like even Tommy Doyle says you can't kill the boogeyman. And as a kid, especially when you're of our age, right? Like, your late 20s, early 30s, the boogeyman is what we called like any kind of thing hiding in your closet as a kid. It was the boogeyman. And then you watch a movie like this, and then they refer to Michael Myers as the boogeyman. You're like, oh shit, that's probably what's in my closet.
Yeah.
Like you can't, and then hearing you can't kill the boogeyman, and then the movie proving you can't kill the boogeyman, you're like, well, damn, I'm fucked. Like, might as well go ahead and quit the 5th grade and,
Yeah. But I mean, so
be dead soon anyway.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this film was just simple in its execution. Kid kills his sister when he's a kid. He's locked up for 15 years. He escapes, goes back to his hometown, and it's almost like, did you notice like all the parents are gone? It's like every parent in this film is either at like some Halloween party or something. So it's literally just a bunch of kids and teenage girls, and their respective boyfriends or lack thereof to fend off Michael Myers. And the only 2 adults really running around is a sheriff who doesn't believe Dr. Loomis, and then Dr. Loomis. So it's kind of that whole, like, what do we do? Like, there's no grown-ups. We can't get help. And then the keys. The keys. And then even with Dr. Loomis, he's always like 2 steps behind what Michael Myers is going to do next. But
yeah, I mean, Justin, when you think about it, I mean, that's one of those things that is famous for that time, right? Like always having the parents be gone, or you know what I mean? Because you look at Slumber Party Massacre, you look at Black Christmas, you look at this film, right? Like the parents are always gone.
Right. But in this film, those movies are like in contained areas, right? This one, it's like, this is affecting this whole town. It's like, I don't know. And I don't know if that was like intentional or not. It's just something that as a kid always added that, like, if you hear like something go bump in the night, like who are you going to call? Right. It's like your parents. You're like, hey, come check this out. But
I'm not sure that's how that song goes, but
okay, listen. But it's like in this movie, Tommy Doyle is like freaked out, and all that's there to protect him is his babysitter. And, she's being stalked by this dude. So it's almost like she's putting him in danger. If she wasn't his babysitter, he wouldn't have been in that situation. And actually,
I'll tell you
if she would have listened to him at the beginning of the movie and never would have walked up to the Myers house to drop off the key, it's all her fault, man.
Laurie Strode can sling a fucking a planter pot. Like she can sling that shit.
Yeah.
Trying to get back in the house, throws that up at the window, and then Tommy Doyle's just like, that woke me up, like, and comes to the window.
That was like a Highland Games throw. I mean,
yeah.
As a Scottish man myself, I can appreciate it. She would have done good in the weight over bar. I could go all day, but yeah.
Well, so what's your favorite kill in this movie before we move on?
In this movie, I mean, it's got to be Bob. Like the sticking to the door. But I also like the scene where he kills Annie, because there for a moment she realizes, oh shit, because she goes back in the house to get the keys, and she comes out.
Yeah, we talked about this before.
And the door's unlocked, and she opens it, and she gets in, and she's like, why's the windshield fogged up? Michael Myers like doing something crazy in the back seat.
He's back there trying to breathe in that mask. You just felt what that felt like.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah.
So mine is Annie. That's probably my favorite kill. I mean, the Bob one is the classic. That one's really, really awesome. But I think I like for exactly what you said, the killing of Annie Brackett.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. The first one doesn't even have a whole lot of kills, right? If you sum them up, like, okay, he kills his sister at the beginning of the film. Then when he escapes, he kills the mechanic to get his outfit. Then he kills Annie. He kills Bob. He kills Linda. And that's it, right?
Yeah, this was actually a trivia question you asked me, remember?
Yeah.
And I was naming them.
So that's it.
And I couldn't get
the mechanic.
I couldn't get
right. Is it?
No, I got the mechanic. I got all the ones like that. I couldn't get Linda.
You didn't remember
that was the easiest one.
No, it was his sister.
Oh yeah, the one at the beginning of the film.
But I mean, so this film doesn't rely on a whole lot of kills. It relies on the suspense that leads up to those kills. I mean, the mechanic is just kind of like a throwaway kill to explain how he got the outfit. But his sister, the opening scene, that long shot leading up to that, and then Bob going to get his beer, and he thinks someone's playing a prank on him, and he's like, all right, come out, and opens the door, and then he just comes out, and he stabs him up against the wall with that amazing John Carpenter score. He as soon as he busts out of the pantry closet, it does like that stinger. It's like that thing, and it's just, I don't know. And then
what is always hilarious to me is picturing Michael Myers driving. Like, Michael Myers driving a car is always the most hilarious thing to me.
If you actually pause or slow it down whenever so the scene, I love this scene also, when Loomis is standing outside the hardware store, and he looks one way and then he turns as the car goes by, and then he turns back. If you look, he's driving the car, and I swear to God, he's wearing the mask. Like,
I would
just go play it back and slow it down.
Because the speed kills part, you can't see him in the car there.
Yeah, just imagine him slamming on the brakes and like looking at them in the rearview mirror. Like, imagine what that looks like. Just seeing him looking in the mirror.
Well, you kind of get that in part 2 when he's outside the hospital and you see him in the side mirror. That shot of
where
the car.
He walks
it looks
into
really
the parking
ridiculous.
lot.
Yeah. But so I think that's pretty much all we can say about Halloween episode 1, Halloween part 1, right?
I mean, without talking for 4 hours, because I could literally go on, because there's a lot of interesting stuff about this. We talked about the inception of the film. We've talked a little about, like I said, the story's straightforward. Kills his sister, sent away for 15 years, escapes, comes back to his hometown. His old, psychiatrist, his doctor, is trying to track him down and stop him from killing more. He kills a couple people. Laurie Strode fights him off, and then at the end of the movie, he disappears.
Halloween was a movie that didn't need any remakes. Like, we've talked about this a little bit, but even Carpenter, right? So Rob Zombie came to John Carpenter when he wanted to remake it, I guess, to try and get his blessing. That's normally how these things go, or to, get the rights, or, whatever, the legalities. And John Carpenter told him, he said, this is all legitimate information. This is all, through video interviews. And John Carpenter said, yeah, man, it's your movie now. Make it how you want it. And so basically, Rob Zombie did an interview for some sort of thing for TV on Halloween, and they were talking to him about when he met John Carpenter. And he was like, oh, well, John Carpenter basically gave me the cold shoulder. John Carpenter saw Rob Zombie's interview, and I quote, John Carpenter has publicly called Rob Zombie a piece of shit because he said, I don't know why that man lied on me. I never gave him the cold shoulder. I was anything but, basically saying he was really, really nice to him and all of this. And then Carpenter was asked about Zombie's remake, and he said, well, he obviously is a little bit biased now that he doesn't like Rob Zombie himself, but he said the movie in particular, Justin, he made Michael Myers too big, too bulky. He's not some sort of he's not some sort of like wrestler figure, and he also hates the backstory, right?
Yep.
Because Carpenter had written and conceived Michael Myers as like a force of nature and sort of like a supernatural being, that can't be killed, as opposed to, hey, this is this little boy that's all screwed up and
has a typical like abused childhood and trauma and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But we talk more about that in our Rob Zombie episode if you guys want to check that one out. I don't remember what number that was, but just go and you'll see Rob Zombie, and we go in depth on that.
But I mean,
so
there's that. There's just little tidbits of information. Like I see you've got here, like the film was made in spring, so they couldn't get pumpkins. Or it was hard to get pumpkins. It wasn't even filmed in Chicago. Illinois. It's supposed to take place. Haddonfield, Illinois is actually a made up town because Deborah Hill lived in Haddonfield, New Jersey, or she grew up there. And it was your typical little small town America. So they shot this in Pasadena, California, called it Haddonfield, Illinois, and
I had to shoot around
palm trees, but
they had to actually get dead leaves, and throw them all around the scene, and then gather them back up in a bag and reuse them across each shot that they were doing. It's almost like they made it harder for themselves doing all that. But I mean, I guess it's cheaper. It's just physically more work.
Yeah. But I mean, to wrap that up, this to me is just a masterclass in suspense. It's just, this is the definitive slasher film for me. So,
well, it's one of those movies, right? It's one of those movies that you can tell that it was taken from the old days of horror, right? Like Hitchcock, and in days like that where they didn't have to rely on gore gags and they didn't have to rely on, certain filmmaking techniques. They could just tell a good story and build the suspense that way. And that's really how this was shot. And shout out Dean Cundy for cinematography on this one.
How's it going, creeps? One quick mid-episode break to tell you a little more about our sponsor. Since 2016, Everblack Coffee Company has delivered exceptional single-origin coffee and high fives all over the world. They understand that a cup of coffee is so much more than something you drink. That's why they source their beans from farms that only use fair trade and organic growing practices. When you buy coffee from Everblack, you can be certain that you're getting the highest quality coffee available by ethical means only. It's time to start looking at coffee differently. Head over to everblackcoffee.com and grab a bag for yourself. It's deliciously dark. Now back to the show.
So Halloween 2, 3 years later, right? 1981.
Which is a direct sequel happening on the same night as the 1978 Halloween. This was again written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, directed by Rick Rosenthal this time, even though there are some scenes that were added later that John Carpenter came up with to add a little bit of backstory that needed explaining in some of the film. So he directed those, from my understanding.
Halloween 2, Justin, hold on, has the best Michael Myers name of all time. That's what it's known for. It's known for Dick Warlock, the guy with the craziest name that I've ever heard in my life. Like, I've known a lot of crazy names in my time. And Dick Warlock takes the cake.
Dick Warlock just takes the cake. Yeah.
And then, like anywhere that you go that's any sort of formal, they're going to call you Warlock Dick because they always call you by your last name.
Yeah. Warlock Dick.
So I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. That's who plays the Shape and Patrolman number 3 in this movie. Okay, finish what you're saying.
Well, he was also the stunt coordinator in Halloween 2. So he had a lot going on.
He's a warlock.
He's a warlock dick. But so basically, this film, it picks up right where the second one left off. But John Carpenter actually had no intention of writing a sequel to this. Actually, later they wanted to do Halloween as an anthology series. And Halloween 3 was supposed to be moving into that. But real quick, one hot take I have about Halloween 3. That movie, I love Halloween 3, and it does have kind of a cult following now, but the fact that it had nothing to do with the Myers story, it gets some flack. I feel like if Halloween 2 would not have been made and Halloween 3 was Halloween 2, and they were like, okay, we're going to do this every Halloween, we're going to put out a different film called Halloween whatever, and it's a different story, I feel like Halloween 3 would have been received a lot better.
Well, that too, and that's basically what Carpenter wanted, right? He wanted the story of Michael Myers or The Shape to be one iteration, one movie, 1978, right? And then obviously the studio saw the success of it, and they of course were like, we need more of this. But John Carpenter has praised Halloween 3. Like he's praised it in multiple interviews, and he praises Tommy Lee Wallace, the director and writer of it.
It was also a production designer on Halloween 1 and 2.
Right. So, and the opposite of that for poor Rick Rosenthal, where John Carpenter basically trashes Halloween 2. He has been quoted with saying it is an abomination of a film. And he also says that Rick Rosenthal was not basically in tune with what Halloween was. And we sort of disagree, though, right? Like, I sort of disagree.
I disagree. But I get where he's coming from in the sense that, stylistically, the two films are different. But John Carpenter also has to take a little responsibility because he did write the screenplay. But with that, he also did not really put his heart and soul into it, right? Because he didn't have an intention of making a sequel with Michael Myers. He was going to move on to make The Fog. And Irwin Yablans was like, okay, great, let's make The Fog. We worked on Halloween. I want to make another film with you. It comes to find out that John Carpenter was actually going to make The Fog through Embassy. So a lot of legal obligations came over John Carpenter when Irwin Yablans was like, no, you know what? You're either going to make The Fog with me, or I'm going to sue you. And what's going to happen is I'm going to let you make The Fog with Embassy, but you have to come back for Halloween 2. So that's eventually what happened. So Carpenter responded by, I think he wrote the script, he says, over a weekend, and with a 6-pack of beer.
Could you imagine that? Can you get a mental picture on that? Like a youngish John Carpenter, drunk as shit, writing the Halloween 2 script.
On a typewriter, nonetheless. Like
probably shirtless, probably just like smoking cigarettes.
Smoking a cigarette.
This.
Yeah. Yeah, he was done. But so, he didn't want to do it. He was forced to do it legally. So he didn't put his heart and soul into it. So as far as like the story, if he's got any qualms with it, like he wrote that. But I think he wrote something great. I think even though this film had a lot of cooks in the kitchen, there were a lot of people that worked on this film. Rick Rosenthal directed, John Carpenter directed some extra scenes. There's a lot of different producers going on. Of course, you had Mustafa Akkad, and then there was someone else. I don't remember his name right off the bat. It's a really long name. But his company had a producing credit. Deborah Hill was back. So there was a lot of people, just like trying to shape this into what it was.
You're talking about Dino De Laurentiis.
Yes, that guy.
I mean, there was enough good names on Halloween 2 that it wasn't going to completely fail, right? Because Dino De Laurentiis, his production company, did movies like Hannibal and Dune. Hannibal was later, but then they went on to they did Army of Darkness. They went on to do Season of the Witch. They did a whole lot of stuff. Flash Gordon, so they were no sort of fly-by-night kind of company. They did King Kong in 76, The Dead Zone, Silver Bullet, so they were known for doing some really, really solid movies, especially in the sci-fi and horror world. So there were plenty of good names, like you said, attached to this. The biggest problem is like the man, the myth, the king, John Carpenter. Like the biggest problem is he just hates it, he just hates it. And that sort of sours it a little bit.
Well, I think one of the problems too with the fact that there were so many people involved in the sequel, it's not with the movie itself. It's, if you watch interviews, it's like everybody involved talks shit about this movie, but it's not for their contribution. It's, oh, well, so-and-so did this and I didn't like it. And then even Irwin Yablans was like, I didn't like the script John Carpenter gave me. John Carpenter didn't like Rick Rosenthal's directorial vision. Deborah Hill didn't like Dick Warlock's performance as The Shape. And
And he's like, well, she never told me she didn't like my performance, you know? And
yeah, he was like, isn't it the Making of Halloween 2 documentary? He's like, and I'm aware that Deborah Hill was talking mad shit, but she was on set every day and didn't say a damn word. So
here's my thing about Halloween 2. I like Halloween 2 better than I like 1978. That's why I hate that John Carpenter didn't directly direct it. And that's why I hate that he hates it so much, because I love the 1978 Halloween. 1981's Halloween 2. I think they got a bigger budget, obviously, by tenfold. We've talked about this a little bit before. And the actors now have experience. Now they have not just more experience being actors on film sets, but they have more experience being actors in a Michael Myers universe, right? Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. So I think their acting got taken up a notch in the second film, as well as Dean Cundey coming back and already know, oh, this is how I'm going to light this film. I'm going to crush my blacks. We're going to throw some blue light in there. Bada boom, bada bing. And we're going to make it look like this. And the fact of just, again, playing on things that you can relate to, right? So, again, go watch our Rob Zombie episode where we talk in depth about a lot of the Halloween movies. But the hospital, I like where Michael Myers is contained for a portion of this film with, Jamie Lee Curtis, because she's already so vulnerable, right, from trying to recover from the initial traumas from the first film, that in this one, she puts up a good fight throughout the film, but she is still like this wounded person, right? And Michael Myers is still so relentless. And then it goes on to show you more about Michael Myers in general, of how he can't actually be killed, because he got what happened to him at the end of the first one, Justin?
Well, according to Loomis himself, I shot him 6 times. So,
that's Justin's moment.
That is my moment.
That quote comes up at least once every time that we hang out. That for some reason that comes out.
Saying. But I will say that what you tagged me in the other day, the 6 copies of Halloween, and it said I bought it 6 times. It was pretty hilarious. I've only bought it twice though, but on tape anyway. But continue.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I like this movie so much. And then I also like it because it doesn't have better kills, but it has, I believe, the best Halloween.
I'd argue it does have better kills. The original, those kills are iconic, and there are so few of them, and they're built up on the suspense. But I think the kills in Halloween 2 are because that's the thing. Halloween 2 takes everything from the first film up 25 notches, right? The original was scary because of the suspense, and it was in the small, peaceful town, that's being disrupted by this force of evil. But the sequel, introduces a more brutal side of Michael Myers, right? And you've got the surreal setting of this empty, eerie, creepy ass hospital, which, we've also talked about on here, is realistic, because I've been in hospitals at night. You've been in hospitals at night. It's really that empty, it gets that dark, and it's just really spooky. And this film, the kills in this are, I don't want to say they're less suspenseful, but he's a lot more deliberate in inflicting pain, I feel like, in this one.
Oh, for sure. So my favorite kills from all the Halloweens, right, are in my first favorite kill from all the Halloween movies. That includes the remakes. That includes the 2018, and that is the hot tub kill. That is my number one kill out of all of them, and that's here in Halloween 2, where Michael Myers creeps up and first of all, what's the actor's name? Is it Jimmy? I can't remember his name. Anyways, he gets in the hot tub with the nurse, and he walks up, or he leaves. Michael Myers kills him off camera, and then he gets out of the hot tub.
You see it, but it's in the background.
Well, that's what I mean, off camera, not actually off camera, but in the background.
But the reason I like that kill, she doesn't see it. Her back is turned, and he's being killed in the other room, and the glass is fogged up, so you can't really see it, or it's frosted glass.
He got out of the hot tub to go turn the heat up, right? No, to turn the heat down. He got up to turn the heat down in the hot tub, the temperature down in the hot tub. And then when he goes around to turn it down, Michael Myers kills him. And then he comes back in, and then the woman that's in the hot tub waiting for him thinks that that's him coming back, and he's standing behind her, and she starts like sucking on his finger, on his thumb, you know, and kissing on his thumb and stuff, and it's really weird. But then Michael Myers just basically grabs her head and shoves it down in the hot tub because he actually turned the heat up and fries her face.
Yeah, but fun little bit of behind the scenes information about that scene. So did you see in the documentary where they were talking about how that's actually ice cold water in the hot tub?
Yeah, I did see about that in the documentary.
Basically, so Jimmy's the character's name. The actor's name is Lance Guest. He was saying basically they did it so since it's supposed to be a romance scene, you know, the nurse is naked and they're like making out, to keep him from getting a boner. They made it ice cold, and he said that when he stepped in, he touched a toe in the water, and he immediately shriveled up like a raisin. His exact quote was something. He said, "You want to talk about the Italian stallion? No way, buddy." I'm like, so
that's funny.
Yeah. But I mean, this film, you know, that's my favorite kill. I think my second favorite kill in this is it's a tie between the needle through the eyeball,
which is great,
or when he kills the nurse in the hallway, because something about that scene, as simple as that kill is, you know, Laurie's running down the hall, right? And she runs into the nurse. And then Michael comes out from one of the corridors and he's got the scalpel and he like sticks it in the nurse's back and just like a beast picks her off to the ground and holds her there. And she's like dangling, and then her shoes fall off and hit the floor. And something about that scene just has like this weird brutality to it. And that's what I mean. Like the sequel ups the violence, ups the brutality of Michael Myers. And
I mean, it definitely does, but that Annie Brackett kill in the car is still like, that's either in the second spot for me or the third spot of all the Michael Myers kills. I just really enjoy that one. But yeah, so spurring from that, you also get the crying blood tears Michael Myers in this movie, right? So that's interesting. That's one of a crazy shot, you know, one of the best shots in all of the franchise.
It is, but that shot also annoys the shit out of me at the same time.
Why?
Because if you watch it, you can see where they've got the tubes under the mask, and it's actually not at the bottom where like the tear ducts would be. It's like on the top of the eyes, and it's
Nobody actually looked at those tubes, Justin.
Listen, man. It's what I do. I analyze the shit out of movies. It's almost like I should be on a podcast where I do that.
You should use your 1981 eyes to watch this film.
Well, that's about 10 years before I was born, so I wouldn't be watching the film at all. So,
Well,
yeah, but
1981's Halloween 2. I don't hate it. Not nearly as much as John Carpenter. I actually really like it. Like I said, I like it better than the first, and I know I'm alone on that. Justin likes the first one better, but
it's close. It's close though. It's not like I think the second is miles away from it. I just like I said, I like the simplicity. The sequel. So some of the things that bother me about the sequel was mainly, you know, that's what introduces the sibling thing. You know, that in the car. The nurse, she's like, you know, that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister. And so while they were filming Halloween 2, they were doing some pickup shots for Halloween 1 for the TV spot. So they actually shot some, it's supposed to be like flashback scenes, you know, introducing that sibling connection to the first film. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if Halloween 2 is where it ended. It's that the sibling thing is what muddles the rest of the franchise, because you've got 4, 5, and 6 where, you know, Laurie had a daughter and then Laurie died in a car crash. So now Michael comes after, you know, his niece who's in foster care. And then after 6, they were like, well, we're not going to continue that. We're going to make Halloween 20 years later, which that movie gets a lot of praise. We're not going to talk about that piece of shit. I don't know how you feel about H2O, but
it's not the worst in the franchise, but it's definitely down there at the bottom.
I've got two statements about H2O. One, what the fuck is that mask? Two, Josh Hartnett. So,
well, what about Josh Hartnett? You don't like Josh Hartnett?
I like
less
Josh
angry
Hartnett
if you had some Activia.
I like Josh Hartnett in one movie. Can you guess what it is?
30 Days a Night.
There you go. 30 Days of Night.
You don't like him in The Faculty?
Well, I forget he's in The Faculty, so I guess that's two films, but I mean, what does that tell you about his performance in The Faculty if I always forget that he's in The Faculty? But I don't know. Like, I watch H2O over Resurrection all day. Like, but that's what I'm saying. So
yeah. Resurrection's way worse.
Yeah, so they kept the family tie thing. They made a whole different storyline with H2O and Resurrection, and that's that one simple thing that they introduced, them being siblings, is what jumbled the franchise and caused all the goofiness. So I feel like if they would have taken that out from the second one, it would be tied with the first, and I would look at them as one whole movie, and it would just be this masterpiece. You know,
that's how I kind of look at
two.
it. That's kind of how I look at it. So, like Kill Bill, like Quentin Tarantino says, it's one movie. He just had to make it into two. They shot it all at one time. He had to make it into two because he couldn't, he couldn't put a movie in theaters and run it for 4 hours because people wouldn't watch it. Which people probably would, but not a whole lot of people. I would. Now, like this, like you said, this could still be, if somebody, ripped it together on one tape or one disc or something like that, it could be played as one movie, because when this movie starts, Justin, it picks right up from where the first one leaves off. And that's one of the great things about it. I've always thought that this movie pioneered people doing that a lot, right? I thought that was sheer writing genius, because it not only does it recount the, first or the very last minute or two of the first film, but then it goes on and it picks up right as soon as Michael Myers falls off that balcony and he's back on the kill, right? So he goes over to what is the name of that older lady? Her and Harold, right? Where she's trying to make the sandwich and yelling at Harold and the thing, and he grabs the knife, right? So
it's the
I don't remember her name. I just remember Harold.
Yeah, but they even call the knife by the name of the Elrod house.
The Elrod house, that's it. Yeah, so so I've always just thought it was genius how it picked right up, and then it played on how I was talking earlier in the very beginning of this podcast about childhood fears and trick-or-treating and stuff like that. They have the kid that goes to the hospital because he got a razor blade in his candy, just stuff like that is little nuances that I was always just fucking great. This is the universe right here, because where it was small time America, very relatable in the first one, this sort of started making that Michael Myers exists in this Halloween universe, right? Because you didn't only get introduced to more characters, but you went outside the neighborhood. Michael Myers wasn't only isolated in that neighborhood. He could also go to this hospital or go here. You know what I mean? And that was scary.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I agree with you, like, on almost everything about Halloween 2. I just think that is the one thing stopping it for me from being, like, tied for my favorite, is just that simple fact that they're like, hey, they're siblings. And I feel like that wouldn't bother me as much if Halloween 2 would have still ended and they would have been siblings, that'd be fine. But opening that door led to, and it's not that I'm like, I hate the other films, because Halloween is my favorite franchise. It's just there's so much inconsistency and so many hands have touched the franchise, and it's all because of them opening that door for their sibling backstory. But I mean, other than that, like, this is definitely a 10 out of 10 film for me. I don't know. I feel like Halloween and Halloween 2 should always go hand in hand. I do like the 2018 Halloween. I like it as a direct sequel to the first, mainly because it does away with the whole sibling thing. But if I had to choose between Halloween 2 and 2018, it'd be Halloween 2.
100%. Like, I'm not a fan of the sibling thing either. I think it gives too much of a reason for Michael Myers to be hunting down Laurie Strode, and then you're like, well, why the fuck is he just killing everybody else? They're not necessarily in his way, because sometimes he like goes out of his way to kill these other people, when he could just beeline straight to Laurie Strode, because if that's why he's after her, he could have made his life really simple. Now, 2018 remake, it was great. It was good. It was probably a 7 out of 10 for me, right?
I think it's my 4th favorite in the entire franchise.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree there, because I think a lot of the Halloween franchise is
your
bullshit.
3rd favorite might not be my favorite. My 3rd favorite.
It's probably not.
Because my top 3 Halloween films are in order. Halloween 1, Halloween 2, Halloween 3. I love Halloween 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. Tom Atkins is the man.
Dude, Tom Atkins is the fucking man. We need to do a Tom Atkins episode so we can talk about Halloween 3, Night of the Creeps, The Fog.
Yeah. But so I don't even know what I was saying. But yeah, so H2 1981, that is the sequel of choice for me. I don't like how they tried to go away. I wish they would have just done away with 4, 5, 6 and everything else beyond that, and then picked up, at 4. Or even made like a missing 3, right? Instead of saying, oh, well, we're just going to, make this the sequel, It didn't need it. The sequel didn't need a remake.
I guess I get that.
They could have still done like a number 3 or number 4, like a true Halloween 3.
Right. No, I feel that. I don't know. I just still think on their own, Halloween 1 and 2, like I watch 4, 5, and 6 from time to time, but Halloween 1 and 2, I definitely watch every year, multiple times. So, I mean, that's,
While we're here on this subject, me and Justin go round and round on this. And sometimes he agrees with me, sometimes he doesn't. It depends on the day, and it depends on what he's wearing. So right now he's wearing a Michael Myers full-on costume, so he's probably not going to agree with me. But I will debate anybody any day of the week that Friday the 13th has a better filmography than Halloween does. Now, head-to-head, Michael Myers is a better character than Jason. But Friday the 13th filmography is a lot better than the Halloween filmography. Also, the Nightmare on Elm Street filmography is better than the Halloween filmography. But
okay, now that one I disagree with you on.
Michael Myers is still a better villain than Freddy Krueger.
Now here's my take. I agree as a whole. Friday the 13th. God, my voice fucking cracked here because I'm upset that you're attacking my Halloween franchise. But no, okay. So Friday the 13th, I agree. As a franchise is better. Is it perfect? No, because where Halloween has 4, 5, and 6, and those are like, but then you've got H2O and Resurrection, which are like fucking terrible. To me, Friday the 13th, its sins are way worse. Like Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, like those are just kind of unforgivable.
You just named 2 movies.
I did.
It's only 2. Those are the only 2 bad ones.
Okay.
Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X. Even the Friday the 13th remake from 2009 is better than the Halloween Rob Zombie remake.
Now that I do agree with. But, okay, you've also got Part 7, Friday the 13th, which is kind of... It's okay. But it's fucking... I don't know. That's weird.
Busta Rhymes ain't roundhouse kicking anybody in Friday the 13th.
No, but Jason's getting his ass kicked with telekinesis. Come on.
Yeah, but there's telekinesis in Halloween, isn't there? Is there not?
That's not okay. Listen, that's telepathic communication. That's not
you're losing this argument.
No, that's he can telepathically communicate with his niece in part 5, but she's not like dropping his ass to the bottom of a lake or bringing him back to the dead from the dead. But so
well, if
okay,
you're gonna argue that point, then you need to make fun of the part where the light fixture breaks and then hangs him with the wire, then drops him through to the basement floor of the house. Like, you can't deny it's a better franchise. It's a better franchise.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. As a whole, the franchise is better. But as movies, Halloween will always be king. And with that...
Listen. If you're talking about... I'm not done with this. If you're talking about Friday the 13th Part 1 and then Halloween Part 1 blows it out of the fucking water. If you could only see one film. But to me, if I take Halloween Part 1, which is the best one... Well, Halloween 2 is the best one to me. And then I take... Friday the 13th Part 6, which is the best one. Which movie would I rather watch? What am I pulling off my shelf 9 out of 10 times? Halloween or Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Every time.
You say that, but subconsciously you went to Halloween Part 2. And with that, we're going to Trivia of Terror. So I've got 2 questions for you tonight that should be fairly easy, and they are both Halloween related. So I'm going to kick this off tonight, with asking you the first question. So, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. In Halloween 2, when Loomis is running down the streets, an adult, one of the few adults on Halloween night at this point, yells out to Loomis, basically telling him to shut the fuck up. He says, "I have been trick-or-treated to death tonight." What does Loomis say back?
Loomis says, "You don't even know what death is." Or
you got
something along those lines.
Yeah. You don't know what death is. You got it. All right.
All right. So my questions, guys, tonight for Justin, I have 2 of them. They are also Halloween themed. So great minds think alike over here at Cinema Creep. So Justin, this could be really simple or this could be a little bit difficult, just depending on how well you know your favorite movie. Halloween 1 was shot in how many days?
Oh, shit. I know the answer to this question.
I know you do, because I think you've told me this before.
I'm pretty sure I have.
Now, do you know it right now?
I'm drawing a blank, because I know it wasn't a lot. Because this was shot within wasn't this shot in 20 days, 21 days?
20 days is the answer. 20 days is the answer. Where'd you pull that from? Wow.
My ass.
Yeah.
My ass. All right. God, we're just moving along with Trivia Terror tonight.
Yeah.
See, this is what happens when we talk about the greatest film of all time. Okay. So.
Debatable.
The name Loomis, John Carpenter took inspiration for that name from what movie?
I know this. This is part of your second question. John Carpenter took the name Lewis from Marion Crane's secret lover in Psycho 1960.
Yep. Lewis. You said Lewis.
Oh, I meant Loomis.
I know what you meant, but it was just fun. He
Dr.
took the
Sam
name
Lewis.
Sam Lewis.
All right. So, guys, that was actually part of what my second question was for Justin. So that's weird, but mine was like a 2-parter. So, so this is going to be easy because I thought that was going to be the harder part of the question for Justin. So all I have left on the question I had was Marion Crane was played by whom, and what is an interesting detail about that?
Okay, well, now I have to remember her actual name. The interesting detail is that it's Jamie Lee Curtis's mother.
Yeah.
Oh, what is her name?
Oh, come on.
Don't tell me. Oh my God, now I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, you can't miss this.
Oh my God, dude. Janet Leigh.
Yep. Look at that. 2 for 2 for 2 for 2.
Yes.
That's what happens when you talk about movies that you know pretty damn well.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes you get put on the spot, even if you know the movie well and you can't think of it. But sometimes it's like you just know.
Well, just like there, I was like, oh, what is her name? Like that. I know it's Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, but then I was like, oh yeah, Janet Leigh. So
it's Mrs. Curtis. Mrs. Curtis.
Mrs. Curtis.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Justin.
All right. I have one more quick question. A surprise. This is a pop quiz for you.
This is a surprise. Okay. What you got?
Speaking of Janet Leigh, in what film of the Halloween franchise did she play Jamie Lee Curtis's mother? Laurie Strode's mother.
In the Halloween franchise, which one did she play?
Her mom. I'm pretty sure she played her actual mom. I'm going to look it up before I ask you that question. So, but
well, you already asked me the question.
She was in a movie. Either way, she was in a movie. She was in a Halloween film.
Well, I know that it would have had to be.
Yeah, it's not her mother. I don't know why I was thinking. I think it's because it's Janet Leigh, so I was like, "Oh, that's her mom." But it's not her mom in the movie, but it is her mom playing in the movie.
So her mom is in the movie. She is in the Halloween movie.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to say
it's just for some reason I was thinking that she was also playing her actual mom. I don't know why I've always thought that, but
I honestly have no idea. So this is just gonna be a wild guess, right? So I'm going to say 6. Wild guess. I have no clue.
Is that your final answer?
6 is my final answer.
Wrong.
I have no clue.
She plays Norma in H2O.
Oh, see, you know what? I was going to say H2O when I initially was going to say H2O when you told me she played as her mom. Because I was like, that's the only one it would make sense.
Well, see, first, I don't know why. I've just always, because H2O, I haven't watched a whole lot. I've probably seen H2O 10 times in my entire life. And for some reason, I've always thought that was her mom. I think it's because psychologically, I know that is her actual mother.
Right.
But the one thing that always sticks out to me is she has this cheesy line where they're trying to fan service, fans of the original 78 film, and they have an exchange, and she scares Laurie, and she says something like, "Oh, I didn't mean to make you jump, but it is Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare." And I'm just like, really? You had to pull the exact quote from the original?
You're better than that, Janet Leigh.
Yeah, you're better than that. But yeah. So I mean, that doesn't count towards your record because that was a bonus question. So
I had no clue about that one. I had no clue about that, but I would have got it right had I just went with my original, thinking that she played her mom in H2.
Should have went with your gut. You should have thought wrong me all these years, and you would have got the question right.
True that.
But
yeah. Socials.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
You want to jump straight into that? All right.
Let's end this one.
Let's end it. I mean, it's where it needs to be. We've talked about these films. We talked about things we like about them. Some production trivia, some nice little tidbits of information. Got out our favorite kills. Time
to take the spiderweb out of the studio.
Yeah, finally. You're gonna leave that on though, right?
This is my new look. I'm Laurie Strode. I want to be referred to as Laurie Strode from now on.
All right, I'll fix it in the podcast background for the video version. But
Laurie Strode.
If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am Dawn of the Living Dad. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's HorrorDad13. You can find Black Mass Films at Black Mass Films on Instagram and Twitter, and Cinema Creek Pod on Twitter. And then, of course, our Instagram is Cinema Creek Podcast. Please go follow that. I put a lot of work into that Instagram. I'm constantly posting, whether it's clips and sound bites from episodes, or keeping you guys up to date on what the upcoming episodes are. And I'm pretty proud of that Instagram. So go follow Cinema Creek Podcast. Andrew, where can we find you?
Guys, I am Drewcifer, DREWXCIFER, across everything: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And the most important thing is have a happy Halloween and go follow the Cinema Creek Podcast Instagram.
Yeah. So happy Halloween. And real quick, again, do not forget, if you are the first person to comment the correct answer on the relevance of what is my costume here? You will win a free bag of Everblack coffee, the roast of your choice, whether it's the light roast or the dark roast. So, don't forget to do that. Everblackcoffee.com if you want to just buy some.
I guess they would need to put what they wanted in the comment. That way we would know.
Yeah. Or, we'll just, once you comment and if you're the winner, we'll get in touch with you somehow and go from there and send you your bag of coffee. So that's been episode 16, guys. We will catch you in the next one.
See ya.